Good, and welcome to another Exploring Consciousness with the Earth Nouveau team. And today we are lucky to have a co-host. Amy Kruzic is going to, she's a long-term member of Earth Nouveau anyway, but today she's co-hosting the show with us. And our topic is all about words, energy, communication, and anything that comes up around that. Yeah. And before I pass on to Amy, I'm just gonna read for anyone who hasn't seen Amy's bio in the Earth Nouveau post. Amy, before closing her book From the Workplace Narrative 7 years ago, Amy was a learning support teacher's assistant at the local elementary school. And in the latter part of her career, a teacher in a Montessori school in the 4th and 5th year old classroom. During this time in the summer, Amy worked as a camp facilitator and counselor with a nonprofit organization for autism spectrum disorder children and teenagers. The aspiration for the camp was to guide these individuals in becoming self-directed, self-maintained, self-sustained, free-thinking, and creative. Amy's fondness for working with and being around children has always sparked the curiosity and imagination inside her to fuel her own expression and expansion, and to also apply it, also apply it to herself. And I lost the document now, but I think I read everything pretty much. Good. Okay. No. Expansion, and also apply it to her watercolors, acrylics, and sewing of magical things. Thank you very much, Amy, for plunging into this today with us and having a chat. And we see how the group can contribute and what you and I and we all can contribute to the group.
Thank you, Martina. Thanks. I'm excited. I'm ready to have fun today and get illuminated. Okay, so, and I have mostly questions that I hope everybody participates and helps, not everybody, but whoever wants to participate. But so as I was talking to Martina before this, she said, look up 73855. I'm like, okay. So I look it up, and it's about the communication of emotion. And this guy, Albert Mehrabian, he was a psychology professor. And so he did this study that 7%, we only communicate 7% of our words, 38% is our tone, and 55% is body language. And I thought, ooh, that's interesting. So I went back into my file tree as a child, and I saw myself, and I have 9 siblings, and I saw myself doing the 38 and 55%, which was the tone and the body language of that, like, oh, that's what my mom does when she does this and then does that, and my brother does this and my sister does that. And I thought, wow, those were my interpretations that I used instead of, I feel like I didn't even hear people's words. I just was an observer of it. But then I thought, okay, so if 93% of our communication is nonverbal, what about the vibration and the frequency of our language, and how is our intent behind how we speak come into play? The words that we use, the intent, and are we aligned inside when we speak to others? And sometimes do we speak just from our mind and not from our heart? And how can we align those two together to be able to be incongruent with ourselves inside? And then I was thinking, okay, what about the communication we speak inside of ourselves? So we have that type of communication with ourselves, and then we have the outside. And then as I went along my years, it was like how my communication changed. I mean, I wasn't much of a speaker as a little child. I was always told, why, the cat has your tongue? Like I don't speak. So so that kind of played a role. I kind of was interested in all of this together. How do we play with this today? I have a little improv thing that I'd like to do later, if you guys are up for it, on how it would be on how we create a story through our words and how each of us add to this story. And I'll pick like a little prompt and we'll just, create a story that way. Then I thought, okay, the frequency of words, and then like the questions that are like, then we have the collective consciousness and the energy harvesting, and we have a family narrative, and we have a friend narrative, and all those different places to go. And then of course I went to telepathy. Can we, I'm sure we know how to do that, but is it buried somewhere? Can we do it here on Earth? So I'm just going to throw back out to you guys. Any questions you have? I know that, Martina asked about when you talked to me about the 73855. I didn't know if you could add anything to that.
I've got a question for you, because you said something very interesting. When you started off talking, you said you had 9 siblings, right?
Yes.
And you were very much the observer in the family. Yes. So here's a question now. And also you said you didn't really use a lot of words. So you used more your tonality and, your body language and everything. So how much, and this is quite interesting for anyone who feels, more the observer in a conversation than actually the participator, if that's a word. How much would you say have you been in your body when you were at that age?
I would think that I actually was in my body.
You were?
As well. Okay. Now that you say it, you were, I think that, okay, if I'm sitting there, I'm trying to go back to my little self here. And if I'm watching everyone doing their thing, then no, I'm not in my body, because I'm watching them and not to what's here.
I'm wondering,
because I'm out there,
I'm wondering if we can make a connection with words, using words rather than using tonality and body language, and relate that to being in or outside the body. Is that something anyone can relate?
Well, I thought of that because I thought, okay, well, move forward to now the technology of texting. We can't see what these people, we can only see their words that they're typing to us. So we're not really reading their body language or their tone. So that was fascinating to me, because I mean, people use emojis and then that's our interpretation of what that emoji means. So yeah.
That's a good point. Amy, what I will do is, while you carry on, I'm just gonna, do you want me to look who is raising their hands and bring them in?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because I've got Caroline, she's having her hand raised.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to make a link so how do we even start using language? If all of that percentage is non-verbal, the communication, it's actually because we learn language last. We learn first like a transmission of feelings, of emotions. We learn pointing at objects, and then in repetition of use of that in association with some sounds, then it becomes a word, and then it becomes a language. But first, naturally, instinctively, our language is nonverbal. That was that.
Yeah, I agree. I can see that, because we have to put in a lot of, we use our bodies when we speak, because inside, so we have what's inside and we bring it out into the world. And sometimes, our emotions, if we get hurt, if we scratch our knee, we look to our mom for, what am I to do here? What's happening? I'm bleeding, but I don't know what's happening. Even as you're just starting to walk. So I don't know. I just find this all fascinating. And what did we come in the fetus of the womb? What frequency led us to our language? Um, I can't really speak a foreign language, but I love hearing people speak in a foreign language. I actually have Russians working at my house right now, and they talk to each other, and it's like, it's so fascinating. It just is like, I just love it. Like light language, that gets to my heart. Like that's my heart right there. So
Yeah, but if you're looking at a different language, that means they went through another filter as they grew up. But the main emotion is still universal. It still exists. I don't know where I'm getting at.
but is the interpretation, like there's some words that I may use that I have one. This is an instance. So when my daughter, I grew up saying that we called a shopping cart a buggy. We didn't call it shopping cart. So my daughter and son grew up saying buggy, and then she gets to school, and kids didn't understand what she was talking about. So I think a lot of it has to do with our interpretation.
Yeah, I mean,
Mary,
the idea remains the same in the communication. The words is just a tool to convey an idea, but then there are some cultures in which an idea doesn't even exist at all. I mean, I talked about this with Sean. I'm French, right? In French, we don't have a word for knuckle. And it was like mind-blowing to me how often it was used in English, because it was like, what is that? We don't have a word for this. Or how many languages have like a dozen words for snow or sand, depending on their environment. You need to name what's around you, and that's how a language starts. But it's before the first step is you're in your body and you're observing around you, and then you name things to communicate with somebody else. And just to touch on what you said about telepathy, if that's how it works, then would telepathy be based on a language? Or ideas and emotion attached to it?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's why I brought it up, because I know that it's like mind to mind. But yeah, I would say right now, as I'm thinking of something, it could be attached. I don't know if you, whatever, I'll put this out there, but when you think of a mother nursing her child, and she's away from her child, how her milk lets down, she knows her child needs to eat, but her child didn't cry or do anything like that. She just knows that the baby needs to eat. Is that telepathy?
And I think it's the body. I think the body knows before the words know. And we're talking about the body first. I think the language is the last step of an embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's first in, and then you express it. You learn the expression, but taken out of the idea last.
Okay, well, let's bring in Mary and Dora afterwards. You've had your hands up.
I was just going to add to what you have been saying already, that I suppose language in a way gives expression and words and makes sense of the emotions that we can't express, because if we didn't have the words, how would we express them? Yeah, we could express them in body language, but it's a kind of a more sophisticated way, isn't it, of expressing it when we use words for it. And just when you think about the child and the child learning the words for the different objects, we'll say, around it, or for its emotions or its feelings, or for whatever happens if it falls and it needs your help, how much of, the culture is being handed down when the child is given the word, oh, that's the chair, that's the table, that's whatever. Like, that's loaded with information. Besides just the word to define the object, there's so much information being handed down in that to the child. And I was wondering, as you were saying, and I never thought of this actually before, what kind of language, I wonder, or what kind of methods would we use to describe our environments and our feelings and our what was happening in our internal world and external, if we hadn't been handed down the words and if we hadn't been given the language. So I suppose you're going back to primitive man. How did they communicate? Like, you know, those fist pumping the chest business and all that, was that what they did? So was it just that they used the body kind of to let the other person know what was happening inside them? And I'm just wondering, and I'm just doing this on the spot now, what would that be like if you hadn't the words? You know, you just used the body to describe something. And in a way, we're still doing that, but we've added the words, because I think that an awful lot of it is the body language, isn't it?
Yeah, and that also brought to me, like, even the hearing impaired. If you're born without hearing, then you have to use your body to communicate.
But you're using, and your eyes, which of course is your body, but you're using that to read whatever the is in the unspoken, because you can't hear the spoken if you are what did you say, visually, not visually impaired?
Oh, hearing impaired. Hearing impaired.
Yes, you can't hear it, so you know, you're just looking at the expression. So you're using, so it's the body really, I suppose, and the expression. But it is such a huge topic, actually, Amy. It's huge, and there's so many layers to it, really, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah. Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, just carrying on from what Mary said, really, about your body reading the environment. My understanding of light language is that is partly how you form the sounds and words of light language is from your environment around you. And if you look at certain dialects, like the Welsh over here in Great Britain, their dialects, their sound, their words very much represents the landscape in a very sing-songy up and down. And as we know, Wales is full of valleys and hills and so on. So the other point I was going on to say was about telepathy. For me, is not just an intuition, it's also an inner vision. So for example, when I'm going to take Cheddar, the dog, out, if it's my day to take him, I'll be picturing ahead in my mind, I'm going to pick up the lead, I've got to collect his water and so on. And he knows, I'm sure he knows this, because he gets up and he follows me around, unless he knows days and times and dates, but he follows me around. On the day I'm not taking him and the dog walker's taking him out, that's not on my mind at all, and he doesn't follow me around. So for me, a lot of telepathy, whether we use, maybe I'm using inner words as well, thinking to myself, I'm going to pick up the lead, but it's just for me, it's a vision. I see the lead on the hook and I envision that I'm going to get it a couple of minutes before I do. So that was just something for how I feel telepathy works, because with animals, because we all know that's how they communicate, isn't it? Through telepathy. For me, it's just within a vision.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things to from just what you guys were saying. Absolutely, that's how you communicate with animals. It's all about pictures, because they, you know, they're perceiving, you know, the energy, because words are energy, right? You know. Now, even if we speak, words are we're still using our body. You know, we make this split, you know, which is like body language, but words themselves are expressed through our body, through the tongue, right? Vibration from the heart and all of that. So that it's a different way of perception here, you know. What I was going to say with all of that. Well, there's so much going on. There's so many different things going on here.
Yes,
for me, a word, and this is the mystery in all of that, actually, for me, it's a word, for me, is a judgment almost. Because it's a container. For me, I look at a word as a container. And everybody throws their thoughts and feelings and emotions and perceptions and conclusions and decisions and judgments into it for what a particular word is for them, right? So I'm actually really happy that, you know, we're only really using 7% words, you know, and that's just really, that's been, I think that's come in. I learned that in NLP many, many years ago, you know. But if we look back into Aby's teaching, the 80-20, 80% memory, our DNA is 80% memory, 20% is the rest. Now the frequency, the vibration, the harmony, and then all our contracts and everything. So the communication is part of that 20%. You know, so sometimes, as you said, Amy, I mean, some people find it easier to speak different languages, and they make it look so easy, like Caroline. I mean, I have no idea. Is she French? Is she German? Is she English? So easy for her, right? So I've got actually a question for you, Caroline, here on this, with regards to words and the feeling that is associated with it. Because, you know, when you teach something, or when you sing, let's say sing is a good one for you. When you sing in English a song, does it feel for you exactly the same as you would sing it in German or in French?
In German, I don't know that many songs in German, but there's actually a huge debate in France that all English language music, if it were to be translated, would be complete crap, because when we're used to a lot more poetry, I guess, in the way we rhyme our music. And then when we translate the basic language of English that's used in music today into French music, then it's just like bogus. It would be very poor quality. But to me, because I have been immersed into the American culture, and I've been immersed on French a bit in Germany, but to me, it's like, yeah, but it's how you'd say it. It's simple. I don't say it as poor French. I say it as natural English. If you just call the things the way they are, sure, sometimes there's a few very witty things that are put into the lyrics, like in rap music, for instance. I know that Eminem, for instance, I love his lyrics because he's really funny. He's very witty in the way that he uses the language. But in French, there's emotion that's attached to the poetry of the language. In English, there's emotion that's attached to the authenticity of the words you're using. So there's that. But it's so much more. To me, I love doing anything I do. I love it as long as it's in English. I love teaching English. I love listening to music in English. I love speaking English, because for me, somehow it feels more fun. Anything in English feels more fun. And that's how I got good at it, because I couldn't quit. I got obsessed with the English language. And there's, it's like there's this array of emotions that you can express in English that don't sound good in French. And also swearing in English is just delicious.
Yes, I agree.
So much better. In French, it's just, it's ridiculous. But in English, it's, love it. You can, it's like you can take out more anger, you can take out more, you just can take out more. There's more that comes out in English. It's just great for that.
There's almost this, not a stigma, but there's almost a different representation of an entire language that is associated to a country, you know, like French. Oh, this is so much more romantic and so much more this, and you know, and actually it's this again is an association to the language as much as we have associations to simple words. That's why for me sometimes a word is a limitation. And I would think, Amy, I mean, you have been working with, or Mary too, you've both been working with autistic and kids on the spectrum. And for them, words means very little, right?
Yeah, and they don't actually, they choose sometimes how many words they're going to use. Sometimes they will not answer you, and they don't see a need to answer you. You know, it's only I'll answer you if I have to and if it's required, you know, and it depends. I'm sure you found that, Amy, that there's a huge variation in their ability to use words. Like some of them are very verbal, some of them are non-verbal, and some of them are in between. Yeah. And you have to
Yeah,
be careful how you
absolutely.
phrase it, don't you, with them too, you know, because you have to be really careful because they can be very literal. You have to just get the meaning of what you're saying right.
Yes, I agree. And oh, what happened? Okay. With the literal, yes, definitely working with the autism children, they're definitely literal. And we had to bring sarcasm to teach them that, you know, there's a different way other than being literal, which was very difficult because some of them just didn't want to, they don't want to be sarcastic. They didn't get it. So sarcasm is another thing that we use, and metaphors, and you know, people have different meanings for it.
Exactly, and it's subtle. Sarcasm is subtle, and I generally found with the children who were on the autism spectrum, they didn't appreciate that. It's like, are you trying to get at me? You know, and of course that's what sarcasm is. There is a subtle kind of dig or slant, or, you know, not everybody gets the humor of it. So and they don't, because they just are so literal. You know, tell me what you're trying to say. You know, just don't hint at it, kind of, you know. I found them really interesting, actually. Did you, Amy, to work with from that perspective?
Oh, very interesting. And they mostly, I learned a lot from them too. You know, and different at the camp, there were just different levels. And so you had to go from one level to another level to another level, all in the day. And yeah.
And they get very frustrated if we don't get their meaning.
Yes, yes.
In a way, I suppose they sort of are a mirror as to what sometimes goes on in our unspoken, because I could actually see a reflection of myself sometimes in their frustrations, and I would recognize that too frustrates me sometimes, and I could see that in them sometimes. You know, they just don't want any of this nonsense kind of that we play around with a lot of the time with the language. They just see it as kind of a waste of time sometimes, and it's, yeah, and it is too, and I don't know why we do it, but it's great fun.
Yeah.
This is such a great I think autistic children or children on any kind of spectrum like that are amazing teachers with regards to words, because we often get so hung up on using, is this a good word? Is this a good word? Especially when you're not a native speaker, you know, and you learn a different language and everything. But what my experience has always been with those children is that they are so hugely telepathic. Having spoken about that before, is they're like, get on with it. I already know what you want to tell me, right? Yeah. So stop all your bullshit, because I know. So they communicate very much on an energetic level. So words is very, very, you know, not important to them. And I think it's a great teaching. Having said all that, I think words are very, very important, especially when we start using our voice and making the words, not because of we want to speak so eloquently or something, but we actually want to start using our body, our own voice, you know, to really start emanating our truth. And it's, again, I don't think when we say emanating our truth, it's not so much about the words that we're saying, but actually activating that tongue heart vibration and expressing it. And I think this is a form of being in the body.
Yeah.
And I think this is also the way we timestamp. Remember that term? Where we actually start, this is where we actually start creating memories. It's not that we can't create memories by not expressing it, but this is by bringing it into the forefront and really starting to express ourselves and our sovereignty. And this is me, and yes, I have a place here, and all that. Laura, have you got your hand up?
Yes, yeah, yes. Just going back, I was going to ask Carolyn a question, really, or anyone who sings, because when you sing, and sort of going back to what you've just been saying, Martina, it's a mind, heart, gut alignment, is it? Because many people, you know, when you sing in joy, usually. So would we say that is there that alignment there? You're singing more from the heart? Because that leads me on to ask the question, and it applies with children too. When they stutter, when they speak, they don't stutter when they sing. Has anyone noticed that with adults too? Now, why is that? Because when we're stuttering, when we're speaking, is it just a mind thing? But when we're aligned with the heart too, when we're singing, then we've got the right balance. And the mind isn't totally in control. Yeah, go on, Lynn.
Well, I don't know if it answers it. It's just that I've had quite a lot of experience with people who've had strokes, CVAs. And the interesting thing with a lot of them is that they won't be, their speech cortex will be affected. So they won't be able to form a sentence or speak, but they can sing a song. So there must be a bypass somewhere that that they're able to you know, come out with a whole song, but yet they can't formulate a sentence.
Yeah.
And going back to you saying about the singing, there's something about the vibration, I think, the vibration of singing that activates your body, because you can be really down, and then if you know, really sing your heart out, it will really lift you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if that helps or not.
Can I just say on that as well, my mother got Alzheimer's, and when she was well into the Alzheimer's and she had difficulty remembering anything, she didn't even know me, she could still sing and she could still play the accordion, and she could remember the tune on the accordion and the buttons to press without any effort at all. So that's the brilliant thing there, question, Laura, that you've raised about singing, because it obviously is a higher vibration, all right, but I wonder what part are we accessing when it's so able to override, you know, the stutter in the child or the Alzheimer's in the older person. It was really interesting to watch that, and I was surprised, you know, and any song I would try to sing, she could sing it with me.
I've noticed that they have used singing as a tool to get over stuttering and stammering. So it's actually a tool. And I'm wondering if it has to do with the larynx positioning. When you mention something about Alzheimer's and being able to still sing or play music, to me, it's like when I play piano, for instance, when I play an instrument, it's like my fingers know by heart what I'm supposed to play, and my thoughts don't go into it. It's muscle memory. And when you sing, there's also something with the height of the notes that has to deal with muscle memory. And therefore, maybe it's in connection with a different part of the brain that then allows you to bypass those limitations that are due to stammering or something like that, I think.
Well, that would be your heart brain, couldn't it?
There's that too.
One of the things is that there's, even though we're talking about language, we're talking about using two different hemispheres of the brain. Sound and frequency and music and cursive writing and motion and dance all come from that creative, three-dimensional creative force. And language, speaking it in a certain way, in a certain manner, and writing it with a certain letter this way and that, it's very mind-boggling for someone who doesn't work from that hemisphere. So when we can see this evidence in our elderly people who can, through music, because music automatically takes you to the right, to that hemisphere of the brain. And therefore it allows you then to immediately, regardless of who you are, or where you've been, whether you've been catatonic or not, to tap into that music that's already there, and it's a pre-programmed of your life force essence, your original creation in the cosmos. So it's really talking about two different file cabinets, two different trees intertwined. Thanks.
Very much so, because the language is, as Robin says, is related to the left hemisphere, to the male domination, and anything singing and all of. But I'm sure there is something much more intricate on the mechanics as well. But that's a very good point there.
Yeah, somebody who's a right-handed person and is taught in the system is at an advantage. Someone who's a left-handed person and who is taught in the system is at a disadvantage, because everything that you're taught to do, you have to learn it in reverse. It's like you have to, in getting in the car and driving forward, you have to get in the car, and as you're learning, you have to learn how to drive in reverse, because you have to go to the weaker part of your brain to the stronger part of your brain. And so I'm sure some of these people maybe that are dealing with these things, maybe they had those issues during life, that pathway was denied them,
Yes, and children sometimes, I think, that were left-handed back in the day in the old system, they were almost forced to have to write with their right hand when they started school. You were, okay, yeah. So you see, if they say if you're left-handed, you're more right-handed in the brain. You're operating more out of that right-handed side of the brain. And if you're right-handed, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know, but that's too black and white for me. I actually think it's much more integrated than that, really.
Yeah, I think the language is kind of split between the two hemispheres, but they talk back and forth. Yes. But see, when you've been forced to go backwards, your networking is already at a handicap, so it can't, you know what I mean? It has to go through a bunch of detours. So music is a wonderful way to help connect anybody, whether they're a child, a tot, a baby, an embryo, or fetus, a loved parent, grandparent, a client we're working with. It's a wonderful thing to bring into it. Especially if you can find one that speaks to your heart, that heart space that lets you go.
Yes, I also have noticed, and I've found Andre Rieu says this at his concerts, that music is a medium that unites. And it does, it doesn't matter what beliefs people have. They all unite in that participation in the music. And you can even see it in small groups, in parties or family that play together, all of that. So it is a wonderful gift, I suppose, that we have, that we can create music. Yeah,
absolutely. Lana, you've got your hand up, and then back to Amy. Sorry.
Hi, I forgot what I wanted to say already.
Oh, sorry, Lana.
Sorry, Lana. Yes,
No, I wanted to go back to what Caroline said, that she enjoys speaking English language. And then the next question, not a question, but what Laura said about why don't people, when they sing, stutter only when they speak. And I wrote a note a long time ago of something that Andrew spoke about on the English language. And what he said was that English language was created as a language to limit you by intonation and vibration, to set you up for programs. So what I was thinking, what Laura said is that when a person is speaking, they have to think about it first. But when you're singing, it's a flow of the intonation and vibration of what you already have established in your consciousness of the song that you are about to sing. So you're not really putting any slowed down effort to think about it. So there is no limitation. So there is no stuttering, maybe. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bit like what Robin brought in as well with the different hemispheres, what you're addressing. So absolutely, yes.
And she's she really said another point too, in that it allows a flow to occur. You're not having to stop at every word, at every little thing. It's a flow. So she's right on there too, as far as my experience.
Because it's not slowed down. When it's slowed down, you're thinking about what you're going to say next. So you're stuttering along the way to do that. But coming back to what Andrew said was that English language was created as a language to limit you by intonation and vibration to set you up for programs. And then there's a but here. He says, but it can also be turned around because it was created as a limitation, because it was meant to be created as something heavily advanced. And we are at a time as a species, we have to make a choice we believe in, because our beliefs means absolutely everything. We are manifesting, co-creating master beings here who are being fooled by propaganda. I just wanted to bring that in because it went under the category of language.
That's so good. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that.
Because I think he only mentioned that once.
I've never heard that. Yeah. I mean, I'm with Caroline here. You know, I'd like to be manipulated then, obviously, because I love English compared to German, I have to say. But here's a question. When you are a dual speaker, which language do you dream in?
Goes back and forth.
Goes back and forth?
Back and forth. Depends on who's in my dream, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I had an experience the other day. I was talking to one of my selves, you know, and she was giving me some shit and she was talking German to me. And I'm like, why are you talking German to me? And it was almost like, you know, she said, who do you think you are? Do you just think English? This was so funny, actually. She actually picked me up on that I do everything in English and almost neglected the German side, the Austrian side, you know? So she came in and she continuously spoke German to me. And I said, that's fine. You can always come in, speak German to me. So that's fine.
I love that. You guys were going, it was coming, my internet must be, I don't know what's happening, but I couldn't get all of your words. Martina, the last time, I forget what you were talking to Caroline about, but I wanted to go back to what Lana said about thought. And this occurred to me as I'm going through this. Which comes first? Do your thoughts come and then the words, or do your words come and then the thought? And is thought, is that an emotion? Is that attached to an emotion? I'm just going to throw that out there. It's like the chicken or the egg.
Do you think that there's something that comes before that?
Right. I could, yeah. When I'm just talking right now, what am I doing? Am I thinking about what I'm talking about first, or yeah.
I think sometimes, and sometimes it just flows when you're really present, when you're really fully in your I am and really connected, for want of a better word, you know, when it's flowing, when it's got divine flow, it does just flow without any precognizance at all. And then I think there's other times that you do think about what you're going to say. I don't think that means you're not in divine flow, but sometimes I find when I'm really in that space, when I'm doing ceremony out, you know, in a sacred site somewhere, and I'm really in that flow, then it just, I don't think about what I'm going to say, but it doesn't feel like I think about it beforehand. It just sort of comes in and out. It flows, comes in my
you're like
comes out.
Being a vessel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A vessel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're interpreting the energy, basically.
Yeah.
And also you're accessing where the memories are stored, because everything is a memory at the end of the day, as we learned the other day, you know. So it's very much like how do you access it? And again, it's through the body. So, and again, when we talk about, you know, the file tree and everything, how we process the information, most of the information is stored in the skull cap, right? Well, it's stored everywhere in the body, depending on, you know, how much information we retain. And then it's just a matter of where and how do we access it, through obviously using our eyes. If you just look at me now, if I look up to the left, this is the remembering the visual. And then the word just comes, because it's just a remembrance before I put a word to it. On the other side, if I look to the right, up to the right, that would be a creation, more of a creation of a memory, creation of an experience, creation of whatever I want to create. And then there's obviously all these different auditories to the left, straight there to the right. That's creation, auditory, and then we got kinesthetic, and we got the internal dialogue, you know, that type of stuff. And then we just put words to it. Yeah. So what else do you want to talk about in terms of energy of words, maybe, and misidentification, you know, especially having been a teacher, right? And, you know, being obviously very aware how parents speak to their children.
There's one other point too, if I could just toss that in, Martina, and that's our intent before a word is ever given. That has a huge part to play on how it goes out and how it affects others, is the intent of which, whatever the word is and whatever content is used.
Yeah, the intent and also the way it's interpreted. Yeah. So what are your experiences there, Amy, with regards to words and misintention, misidentification of words? What do parents often do with children along those lines?
You're breaking up, so I'm gonna just kind of go with the words that I heard, and it was working with the parents. I find that if I relayed a message to the parents, I could see them. They would then go into their vocabulary and their thoughts and say, oh, this is what she meant. But, you know, and then the misunderstanding would happen. And then you would have to be like, no, that's not what I mean. No. So that's what I mean. This is like, to me, this is like so many different ways that people interpret us. And I'm going to say that I've really honestly worked on this, because I was not a person that I did take things literal. I didn't understand what was the word, sarcasm. I had to really, I was like, nope, I'm going to learn about this, and I'm going to be able to be congruent in myself and be able to speak from my heart. Not that it happens all the time, but I'm really trying to do that so that I get it. When people get what I'm trying to convey, they get it. And then there's no language that needs to be said after that, because they get it.
It's no longer about the words, because it's the emanation, the heart-based emanation, basically. Yeah.
Mary, you had some?
Yeah. Just when you were talking there about speaking with parents, I suppose just because you and I did the same kind of work for quite a number of years, I would be able to identify, Amy, with a lot of what you're saying. And I think that the tonation in the word is huge, because I think that carries the intention and the vibration with which you want to deliver the message. You know, you can say the same thing in several different tones and it will be heard in several different ways. But I also think that one thing that you said there just brought to mind for me. You were saying, you know, you give the message to the parent, you can see the wheels going into motion and they're going off into a certain way of receiving this. And I think that their preconceived idea as to what it is you're delivering and how they feel about their child and the child's condition comes into play big time when you're delivering a message like that. And I think actually that's the nub of misinterpretation in our communications generally, not just with parents of autistic kids, but just generally. What's the preconceived idea somebody has before they meet with what you're giving them, because that colors what they're receiving, and that's what gives the twist to what you're trying to deliver, no matter how well intentioned it is or how you work on the tone of the delivery and all of that. And that's actually, you know, something that we work with, I think, on a daily basis in all of our communications in an unspoken way. We don't speak about it, we don't need to. But I suppose because I do some work as a therapist as well, it is an area that I do focus on, because that's what therapy is actually about. There's an awful lot of therapy where you go into what is it in the unspoken here that isn't being said. And the person themselves don't know, actually, a lot of the time. You know, they have to go in there and they have to spend some time with that, and they have to, you know, you have to kind of help them with it. But it's just a huge, rich minefield to explore, actually. So I just wanted to say that, Amy, because what you said there just brought that up for me, you know, in terms of communication and all of that. Okay, I'll take my hand down now.
Shoba, you've got your hand up. Shoba? Oh, you'll have to unmute, darling. No, we can't hear you. Yeah.
Now, can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Super,
yes.
sorry about that. One of the things I love with this particular show is your use of words in your communication, because I've noticed within myself, I don't have a particularly good way of communicating. And listening to Andrew, who I think is past master of the way of having an intention, a word, a sound, and a focus on it, it is for me phenomenal how he does that. And in a way, this is one of the things I have a tremendous interest in coming into your shows, because of this way you communicate. I actually don't have that in my life. To actually go into detail and tear a subject apart, if you want, and discover certain aspects of it. And so listening to you guys now on this particular subject, and I would imagine any subject, I find riveting. And find that something that is going to be so useful to me as time goes on, to be able to really step back before say anything and really bring everything into a form of focus, not thinking. This is not a mental. It's like, what is there within that can be expressed that is going to make total sense to everybody present? I don't know if any of you can follow what I'm trying to say here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, perfect.
And it doesn't matter whether it's an autistic child, whether it's Andrew, whether it's whoever it is, to be able to communicate in such a simplicity, I believe is an art. And I think that's when you were talking about talking and singing. This is the beauty of singing. You can't think and sing. And I remember a long, long time ago when I was at school and there were children who stuttered or had difficulty in bringing their words out. You had to go somewhere up a hillside or a mountain and shout. So you'd get the echo. And that would break the stutter. You couldn't stutter and make that sound for an echo to come. And it must have something to do with the thinking process. You're so concentrating on putting a sound out to hit a certain spot, to make a certain vibration. The thinking doesn't even come into it. And thank you. I find all what you're saying very inspiring. And this is where I'm going to be learning a lot.
Thank you, Shoba. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amy, do you wanna say something to that? I don't wanna. Are you okay?
No,
can you hear us properly? You have a bit of a thing.
I'm really having trouble. I don't know. Maybe I should take my ears things out. But that was, yeah. There's a delay and there's choppiness. So, that was very beautiful, and that's exactly what I'm trying for myself over the years work on, is that simplicity, where I'm not much of I do like to chat, but I'm not much of a talker. I actually like listening and watching and observing and doing all that more than chatting. That's why I'm out of my box today. But I just love, that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Laura, you got your hand up?
Yeah, me Yeah, just when Shobha was speaking, I just wanted to say what you were saying was beautiful, Shobha. Really, really appreciate what you said as well, and your contribution, brilliant. And I also wanted to say that I totally, agreed with what Robin said just now about, for me, the whole energy of intention is what forms what you're going to say, how you're going to get the message across. And I think Mary was saying it just now as well, related to the parents, and Amy was. But I think with your heart-spaced intention, you can take a word that maybe we all know that words have been used against us by the system of domination and control. But if you've got that heart-spaced intention behind, you might be using one of their words, but you say it gives it a completely different meaning. Now, I know that can't override, as Mary said, say the perception of a parent, I think she was talking about. And we know our perception or our perspectives are coloured by our conditioning and so on in life. But I think there's no more you can do than just give your heart to your words. And then you're giving your words your truth. And how anybody chooses to interpret that is their choice in the end, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
I just thought the intention, the energy of intention is absolutely fundamental to speaking words.
Now,
Yeah, it actually becomes a daily practice for me now, where I practice it every day. I'm trying to get that heart space, not trying, I mean, it's there, access it. And it's easier, it becomes easier and easier and easier as I give it my effort and my practice. So yeah, that was beautiful.
so we've just said something else before, or I think Alan used the word labels for words being labels that can be the limitation. And somebody else, I think Lana said they are spells. We often see that, words being spells, right? And that again takes us back to looking at specific words, how they can be misconstrued. And I'm thinking, there's so many things I want to say. Let's just say this. Let's take the word love, right? Let's look at the energy of the word love, because we all know what love is, or don't, because it has so many different definitions, it has so many different perceptions. It's like this huge container, and everyone throws everything into that love, right? And when you have a word that is kind of, what is the energy behind it? What does love really mean to you? Because it means so many different things, and we're all using the same words, and sometimes we can't emanate it from the heart because it has a different meaning for us. I don't use the word love because it is so distorted, so toxic for me, that most of the times it makes no sense using it. It has no energy in it for me. It's just confusing. And the one thing, before we look at this, what does love mean to us? Think of parents, oh, I love you so much, and because I love you so much, this is the way you're going to do it, because I know better and I love you so much, and that's why you're going to do it. What's got that to do with love? That's total judgment. And that's an energy that gets put into that word, which is called love at the end of the day. And then you use it with your partner. I love you so much, but you go out there and you haven't done this and you haven't done that. You know what I mean? So the energy behind one word can be so disruptive. That's why sometimes it's better you just sit there and say nothing. Does that resonate on some level with many different words?
Rather than saying nothing, you could also change it to your intent and your energy.
But then again, you see, the thing is, we don't even know what it means anymore. What does love mean to us?
That's what I was going to say is that I think the word love refers to a power that we have, a way to live from our heart so that we treat others with compassion and kindness. And I think it's been hijacked to mean all this confusion that you're just talking about, Martina. So really, I think that everything that you're speaking is absolute truth. And it's confusing and it's nonsensical because it was made it's a hijacked form of a power that we create from that heart space. That first heart cell is what love is, that, you know, that power.
Encompassing.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway.
it's the fabric of the universe. But then again, you know, we don't use it as that. We don't use it in that expansive state. There's this limitation to it. Got lots of hands up. I don't know who's first. People just talk. Oh, this freaks me out. Caroline, you start.
I think if you look at language like that, sure, then language is a spell because every single word of the language is hijacked because everything is subject to programming, and programming is environmental and also personal because of your own experiences. So that's exactly why words are actually not the best way of communicating, and that's why we revert to nonverbal language to express ourselves to each other. Just to round it up.
and let me just add something to that. You can emanate truthfully, authentically from your heart space, whichever word you're using, if you have clarity what that means to you. It's a clarity thing, you know. Like fun, for instance. I could never use the word fun because I had no idea what it meant to me until I started really looking at the energy of fun. Now, when I say fun now, I can emanate that from my personal authentic truth, which has nothing to do with what somebody else maybe considers or perceives as fun. But that doesn't matter. I can still emanate it as my truth. And this, I think, is the importance of the energy behind the words. Get clarity for yourself. Is there any words that you guys have that where you don't have clarity, that sometimes when you then say it, it doesn't come out congruent because you don't even know yourself what it means?
I know for me, it's the rhetorical of it too. It's I'm sorry. How many times we hear I'm sorry? And there's no meaning behind it. The behavior doesn't change. It just becomes this rhetorical 2 words that people say.
Sorry.
And also, how are you?
Oh, no.
How many times people say, how are you while they're walking away? Oh, how are you? And then you're like, okay, you're not going to tell them how you really are.
That's a perfect example, isn't it? It's such a great example of the meaninglessness of words. You know, that's why it's only 7%. I get that because you can perceive the energy behind that. Exactly like you guys have mentioned sarcasm. Yeah. Sarcasm is suppressed anger. Anyone who does sarcasm with you, it's got nothing to do with being funny. You know, they think they're funny. No, they're angry as hell. You know, but it's okay because you perceive, and you know, this is the thing again with words, you can perceive behind the words. That's why I always go for the energy. What is the energy that I'm really perceiving here? Not what they say, because half of the times what they're saying is not what they're really meaning. That's why it is so blissful then when you get somebody who is actually in their body. I think this is number one. When somebody's in the body, use blah like this now, yeah, and emanates their truth, then it doesn't matter anymore. I've transcribed so many shows I had with Amy, and I'm thinking, what the fuck are you saying? The word's crazy, but it doesn't matter because it's the emanation, it's the tonality, it's the movement, it's all of that.
It kind of reminds me of speaking in light languages, Martina, sounds, and it flows through the person. And they may not know what each individual indication, mark, sound, change means. Perfect. But they get, if they're open at all, they have a basic understanding of what it is. And it's kind of a psalm being sung, you know.
Well, it's the sound and light, which the word is, that is interacting with the auric field of the environment and other people. That's what this communication about is. It doesn't really matter what word you're using at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Having said all that, it is almost like just like writing your dream down. It's a practice. It's a practice of using certain words so that you can then stand there when you have a presentation. You don't have to worry about what I'm going to say. No. It's actually just getting rid of the thoughts and everything and allowing the words to just flow. So lots of hands open. Shoba, next.
Oh, didn't take my hand down.
Oh, okay. Well, just speak, people. It freaks me out, this stuff. Mary,
my hand is up, but really, Martina, you've more or less said everything that I was going to say. I was just, you know, when you were, and Amy there, when you were talking about the I'm sorry piece and how are you, and I started thinking about, you know, again, children in school and something happens, and in order to get everything to move on, you know, your teacher goes over and the one has to say sorry to the other. And I used to be always so amused by a few children, and they still stick out. I can see their faces right now, where they would say, you know, after some duress, yes, sorry. And then they would turn their head to me and they'd say, not sorry. And I often thought, I wonder what would it be like, you know, just to wait with that energy of the not sorry piece, because it felt really potent. And I suppose the thing about words, when you were talking there, Martina, about love, and I think that we've kind of cheapened the sacredness of some really sacred, powerful words. And we've just thrown them around cheaply, and they mean nothing. And I think that's what you're saying about that, the overuse, Martina, of that word, and the insincerity, actually, that sometimes you feel from the use of it. And I just think that, you know, that's kind of all I need to say, because you've kind of said everything, as Martina, as I was thinking there. So I'm not going to take up any more time if Carolyn has her hand still up there. So you go on there, Carolyn.
Yes, Martina, when you made that gesture and you're talking about the different filters, I think there's a difference between using the word as an expression. So you're putting the words out there into the world, regardless of how it's being understood, and then the filter that it is between the way you express it and the understanding of another person of that same word, you know? And you can say, I'm sorry, when you mean it, and that other person cannot mean it, and that doesn't really matter. What matters is, do you inhabit the words that you use when you speak?
Yeah. It's the communicator, himself or herself, that uses the word, you know, that actually expresses it. Absolutely. And it's the energy flow as well. You know, why we're doing this in the first place, you know, Amy. I mean, it's like we get so hung up on using the right words, and this is just really to demystify that. It's beautiful. Hey, I love using great words, or if I can use great words, or if somebody does, always love that, because it's not my language, you know. I love it when somebody expresses themselves, but I can very much distinguish if somebody uses the words just because it comes from this place of, oh, I know, ego place, or it comes from a place from here. And as soon as I perceive them, it comes just from here, ego, I'm no longer interested. I don't care what fucking words they're using. You know what I mean? Because it means nothing to me. Yeah. So let's look at the energy flow behind words, right? Look at the energy. Let's look at the energy flow behind communication. So there is a flow to it. When you have a communication, and it doesn't really matter what words we're using for that, and you are pushing your energy out onto the people, that's really, really like, whoa, it's too much, because words are energy, right? So it's the energy. So when you go and you do a presentation somewhere, and you actually, you turn the flow of the energy around, you say you're pulling energy from people. So think of that. Let's just do a little exercise on this one. You know, I mean, I've been pushing a little bit of energy at you to see what it's like. Yeah. I mean, I get away with that to a certain extent because you know me well enough now. Yeah. But I've had people who don't know me. When I started pushing, I had one guy, I remember he was walking backwards, falling into a bush. I said, what are you doing? And he says, no, it's not what he is. I'm thinking, oh my God, my energy is by far too much because I get excited. You know, when I get excited, it's like retreating. So be aware of that. And it's not that I said bad things or nasty things. It was the energy you couldn't, you know. So when you flip it round and you just pull. So let's just do this. This was a bit of pushing, showing you the pushing. Now I'll show you the pulling energy. I don't have to say anything. And I'm still communicating with you. You perceive the difference? It's not about words. It's not even about this and that. It's sometimes about just being totally calm, no movement whatsoever, and pulling energy.
And even your body language was different too. You came up and then you went back. Yeah. You just relaxed.
Breathe into the body. The main thing is, and we all know that, you want to be with somebody who is present, right? Pushing, pulling, whatever, just be present. It's an interplay of pushing, pulling, you know, back and forth. But you want somebody to be present. I think the most annoying bit is having a conversation with somebody who is not present, right? You get that? What's your experience with that? I mean, that is just like, God.
Well, from my experience, it's definitely, they're not reading my body language and their eyes are over here talking and I'm over here. Like that to me is, I don't want to have a conversation anymore because you're not even here.
Exactly. And it's interesting that the body then turns off. My body turns off. My language, it's sometimes when I have a conversation with somebody who can't receive me, my energy, doesn't matter what word I'm using, doesn't matter what topic I'm talking. I don't have the words, don't come out anymore. There's no words, or I can't think of the English word anymore. I'm thinking, what the fuck, can't speak English anymore. No, it's got nothing to do with that. It's the body saying, shut up. He's not listening, or she's not listening.
Well, it's like an energy blockage, isn't it? It's like and if they're not there, if they're not present in their body, then you'll be talking to their programs anyway. Exactly. And their conditions.
Yes, for sure.
There's a wisdom in it too, I think, when you stop. I think that's your inner wisdom, knowing. Because if you're in your flow, and I know what you were saying, Martina, about getting excited and going into that happens with me a lot. If I get excited, and I'm sure you've seen it a few times here, I can start, you know, I just go into a flow and I'll just keep flowing and I have to think, oh God, you better stop. But if I'm communicating, and I'm not referring to here now, but in other circumstances, and I feel that there's no interest and there's nobody listening and it's not being received, something in me, without even my mind getting engaged, my inner wisdom just knows, just stop. And when I do, it always pulls the energy that was not there back in. So, oh, why did you stop? What were you saying? Well, were you listening? No, but you know, it does pull it back in. So there's something, I think, for, you know, to be learned in that when you stop that flow and you kind of just have respect for what you're doing with yourself, that it then somehow awakens somebody who's happy to just be semi-conscious, semi-there, semi-available, while you just go on and on about something that's really, you know, sacred to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrea, you've got your hand up.
Is she
Can you
there?
hear me?
Yeah,
Can
we
you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. Hi guys. I'm gonna say I love you because I mean it.
Oh yes.
thank you for this opportunity to clear with this topic and with whatever you said, all of you. Um, I've had different experiences with words, with speaking and with not speaking. And once, when I actually when I was in a class, I stood up in front of thousands of people and Dr. Hulen, and I was about to speak, and I did talk about my experiences, and that was like, wow, I have to express all this, and you can change a room within seconds, you know, into total love. But also I've had an experience when I stood up or someone else stood up and the person just started to cry, and that changed the experience. And I really liked what Robin and Mary said about words, that, for example, when I say I love you to my anger or frustration or whatever comes up, that people using some words just such as love or I love you lightly, like it's the sacredness, that the true energy and frequency or vibration that is being stripped away from the power, from the empowerment and freedom that it is creating. And I've had an experience with people who couldn't speak, and we were perfectly capable of talking, if you will, where we weren't talking, but you can just hug the person. Or I met a lady last week when I was out and about on my walkies, and I speak to people, but sometimes I'm in my thoughts and I don't really say anything. But this lady, I just stopped. She was with this dog, and then I said, okay, shall I tell her, shall I not? But at the end, it turned out that I had to stop and I had to express something to her, and it changed her life. Because sometimes people, like, she didn't speak to anyone. So for me, speaking to her and just saying I love you and teach her something, she was like, thank you so much. She said, I'm going to look out for you next time you come, because I do that healing walk sometimes just by myself. So really, the sacredness of silence, like we say, the silence is golden. So the sacredness of whether you say I love you or whether you don't say is the same. Because when I work with people, I don't even have to see them, and I do things in me, so I don't have to speak to them at all. I can, but I don't have to. So I think it's important that people really turn into themselves and start to do the work from there, because it's the most powerful, that word. And that's what I wanted to say.
Oh, Andrea, that was beautiful too, because that really brought up another memory of mine. I used to do hospice, and I would visit the hospice, and there was this one guy. He was kind of on his way out. And all I had to do was sit there with him, and the energy that was exchanged between us, I could feel that just felt amazing to me. I've never experienced it before, so that's why it's in my memory. It's like, whoa, that was just beautiful what happened. So thank you for sharing that. Silence is golden.
Yeah.
I recently had many people whose loved ones passed away, and they asked me how can they help them through the other side without words. And I said, look, if you would like, just always speak, as in they didn't use any words, didn't speak, but ask the heart. And I had many people asking me, I said, look, don't look outside. Ask truly, truly ask yourself, who would you want to ask these questions to? Ask your heart. And whatever comes up, just use that, because at the end of the day, I can ask trillions of people, and trillions of people are going to give me a totally different answer. But I can ask myself, because I am the master. I can ask, I'm the guru, I am the self-transcended master. So I can ask myself, because sometimes we say, you know the saying, what would God say, right? So what would Andrea say, or what would Amy say, or what would Mary say? So ask you, you know, and then whatever comes up, you know, just do it. And people helped these loved ones pass, you know, without any words. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. I just want to give you a small bit of feedback, because sometimes I've had difficulty understanding you when you speak on Zoom, and it's because of your accent. I just can't quite catch what you say. But today you slowed down your pace so much that you spoke very slowly and very clearly, and I heard absolutely every word that you said. So I just want to let you know that, because if somebody doesn't give you that feedback, you mightn't be aware of that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. I've been spending a lot of time in silence.
All right. Okay.
So let's back to, have you got anything, Amy, there? Do you want to talk about?
The mystery of words?
Well, maybe we were also talking about a little bit about the potency behind mantras, you know, when we use certain words and the repetition of it, leading to illumination and all of that. And then, of course, there are certain words, we just love them, and there's a certain dopamine release. So by using, you know, yes, there are certain words that obviously harvesting. And we probably could come up with many of those. Want is one of them. I want something. I still remember that from the Access days. They were saying that the word want implies lack. And they changed the word in, I think, was it 1946? 1946, they started changing, because they changed the dictionary all the time, you know, for the harvesting purposes. And the word want actually implies lack. So every time you say I want something, you say I'm lacking something. And we know what we focus on, we obviously creating. So, you know, this is why, again, look at the energies of the words and what's behind it, you know. Because if you continuously say I want, I lack, then this is what you're creating at the end of the day, you know. So this is part of that mechanism of harvesting. But going back to go.
Okay, so when you were saying the want word, I think I discussed with you, like, you know, the question why we ask why, and the question what. So I think I said something to you like, what am I doing here on this earth? What you said, that's a judgment. How about what am I going to do here?
Yeah,
is more open and not so limited.
It's again, that comes from the Access days, and you know, because Access is very good in reframing everything, and I really like that. The why question was a bit of a no question, because think about it. If you ask, so why, you know, we were talking about children, right? So why are you doing that? Or even if you say it kindly with a different expression, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? You know, you can't say it in any way that it doesn't come through as a judgment, right?
Yeah.
The why question is really implying a lot of that. And that's one word, okay? So very simply, just replace it with, so what is that creating for you? Or what's the value of that? Or is that really fun for you? You know, just, and it has the energy. Look at the energy, perceive the energy is completely different, you know, and especially with children, because they can perceive, they don't hear the words, they don't care if you say why or what, but they hear the vibration of it and the frequency, right? But that again, this is where the spells and the limitations and all of that come in. And
I have to bring up this funny example of that, speaking to children and speaking to dogs, because I was talking to my dog and I'm like, oh, you're such a bad dog. You're such a bad dog. And his tail is like, you know, going like this. And he didn't know what the words meant. He just knew my voice meant, you know, that, oh, something good's going to happen. So I thought that was, yeah, that made me laugh.
That demonstrates it, doesn't it? You know, if you say it with enthusiasm, you know, and everything, the dog picks up the energy of it. Fuck the word.
Yeah, it was so funny. I love that.
Yeah. Isn't that the same with the FUCK word? Isn't that a perfect example? You use it for pretty much everything, you know?
It's a way to move energy.
Well, yes, that's what I use it for mainly when it. You know? But apart from that, I use it when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm this, when I'm that. You know, it really, you can use it for everything. That just shows, hey, the mystery behind these words. You know.
Yeah, you can say, like Amy was saying, you know, the dog hadn't behaved well, but she understood that she didn't, you know, she said it in such a way it allowed her to express it and get rid of it and not have it encumbered in her, but not hurt her dog, you know, not harm another.
Well,
so that was pretty cool.
Here's what's funny is that he wasn't bad at all. I just was experimenting. He wasn't bad. I just wanted to see how he would react to my voice and the words.
Oh, I got
you. It was, yeah. And it was like, he just like, oh.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, Amy, we are going already for like 90 minutes. What about your improv? Shall we do your, is there anything about one word for every solution? Absolutely. I'm loving this. What about your improv? You said you would like.
Okay. So, and I did at the end too, I did want to read a children's story. That's one of my favorites that has one of my favorite words. But let's try this. So I have this writer's book that has prompts with it. And if we each go around, maybe raise your hand if you want to participate in this, but I'm going to read a prompt and we're going to make a story out of it, like a beginning, middle, and end.
Okay, cool. Now, then let's not do the hands because that's too complicated.
Oh, okay.
Whoever wants to say something pops up and says something. Okay.
So okay. This is the first one I looked at. So I'm gonna read this one. And I'm not gonna start it. Martina, you start, okay?
Anyone can, you know, we all.
Or whatever, yeah. Okay.
Reach yourself, peeps.
A fashion magazine editor is headed to a runway show when her cab collides with a hot dog stand. So
read it one more time, darling. Read it one more time. Sorry to be a puss here. Read it one more time.
Okay, a fashion magazine editor is heading to a runway show when her cab collides with a hot dog.
The next thing is she gets out the cab, says, what the fuck is going on? I have to go to my show. Now, what is going on here?
In the meantime, in his hands, his plans flew through the air and collected mustard.
Mustard and ketchup everywhere on her new suit, which she was supposed to be looking good, strutting her stuff and everything. And now look at that.
And now what am I going to do? Guys, I have to get to this runway show. Come on. I need to be there. Can you call me another cab?
This is crazy. Plus, I don't even eat carbs.
Well, I'm just going to eat the hot dog part. I threw away the bun.
Maybe I'll take a hot dog with relish on it this time.
Okay, I'll lick it off. I'll lick it off for you because it was dirty. Here you go, ma'am.
Oh no, there's ketchup all over my cell. How am I going to call my assistant now?
Vroom, vroom, ma'am, you need some help? Hop on the back. I'll give you a ride.
Oh shit, I broke my my heel. Now what am I gonna do? I can't walk in there with these one heel off and one heel on. Oh gosh, can you take me down to Saks Fifth Avenue so I can buy another pair of shoes?
Just for shoes?
But
All the way to
lady,
Saks?
you
Are you kidding me?
But lady, you're gonna be late, very, very late. What the
I
hell are
know.
you doing? Get there
But I have to
already.
look good. I have to look good for this. It's a runway show.
Well, this is fashion. You can look any way you want. You're an editrix. They're just going to assume this is new.
Creating the newest fashion right as it's happening.
You're in New York City. Everything goes there. You have no problems at all. Get going already.
Use it to your advantage.
Put on your trainers. You don't need heels.
Okay. Okay, I get it, guys. I get it.
I mean, trainers and sausage, you might as well call yourself Lady Gaga at this point.
Well, if I get the fan club that buy the clothes, then it worked.
Don't forget to put on your lipstick though, from all that hot dog you just ate.
That's an essential. You always must wear your lipstick.
I like that ending, Mary.
I could see a couple of people I know pulling out lipstick, applying lipstick before they would move from where they were. Yes.
Me too. I'm one of them, Robin.
That was a great ending. I liked it.
Okay.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
That was good. Yes, funny.
Yeah.
That would be funny to hear it back.
Mm.
And transcribe it.
So Amy, would you like to do you want to read the story, or shall we call it an evening?
Yeah, it's very short. It's a preschool story. It's called The Crown on Your Head. I read this to myself because it's kind of meditative. On the day that we met and I put you to bed, I noticed a crown on top of your head. It was made up of sparkling, glimmering things like moonlight and fireflies and dragonfly wings. As the days came and went, it was faithful and true, and we right along with the rest of you. I always knew just what your crown meant. It said that you were magnificent. That means you are grand from your toes to your chin. Take a deep breath and let that sink in. That's about as high as a word can climb. That's the top of a mountain, a steeple chime. That's over the moon in a nursery rhyme. And it means like a star, you were born to shine. Blink 3 times and there you are. You are a twinkling little star. In other words, from your very first day, you were chosen to glow in a very big way. With your crown made of glittering, hiding things, you've got wind in your pocket and wishes have wings. You can run like you mean it, so let the wind blow. There's just no telling how high you can go. Whatever it is you choose to do, no one can do it exactly like you. Ride on a big slide, and if you fall down, remember your glorious, marvelous crown. It won't flicker or fade. It won't dim. It won't leave. All you have to do is believe. Do you, my child? I hope that you do. The world is a wonderland waiting for you. And you get to share it with all of your friends too. They each have a crown that is faithful and true. No one's is brighter. No one's is duller. It's only a crown of a different color. So sometimes, just every now and then, whisper, I believe again. Your crown is your best friend, forever by far. Tells you the true story of just who you are.
That's beautiful. Can you do a shot of it and share it?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
so I love that. I was getting chills as I'm reading it. And my favorite word is magnificent. I don't know if anybody else has a favorite word, but
Magnanimous.
what did you say, Robin?
Yeah.
Magnanimous. It just came to me one day. It was a flow and it was where that came out and it just really, ooh, I like this word. So like magnum, but magnanimous. So probably a made up word.
Beautiful, Amy. It's got such magic and mystery behind that, and simplicity at the same time. And the way you read it was very innocent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful, open, connected. So thank you
Gorgeous.
very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. I just,
This was fabulous, Amy.
great.
Thank you. And
It was great.
Martine.
Thank you,
And
Amy.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on, and thanks, Amy, for co-hosting with us today. And the recording is going to go out, and we'll see you guys next week.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.